Hey everyone, this is the dialogue again. So I am looking at psychopaths and sociopaths. We're looking at actual diagnosed psychopaths and some undiagnosed psychopaths. But let's look at their demeanor, the fact that they don't have a conscience, they don't have empathy, they're just devoid of all of these emotions and the horrific things that they talk about.
I stabbed my first man. I stabbed him. He lived. But it sent out a clear word to the rest of them that you don't want to be messing with this kid.
So let's look back again at what he said.
I stabbed my first man. I stabbed him. He lived.
Very, very flippant. That's one of the attributes that psychopaths have. Is they're flippant. They don't care about anything, what they've done, or to anyone else. He lived. And it's just like he's just telling a story, but he was the one involved.
But it sent out a clear word to the rest of them that you
Did you see that? His lip went up because he's secretly happy about that.
don't want to be messing with this kid. He'll stick you.
That is either smoothing himself down because he doesn't want to actually have to deal with sticking other people, which means killing other people, or it can actually mean that he's actually lying and that he doesn't feel as confident as he thinks. But I would have to go with the former rather than the latter. And here we have the psychopath here talking with his therapist, where a lot of therapists agree that it's no use actually giving psychopaths therapy because they just work it all out and play the therapist.
Your early years where you grew up.
Okay. Well, I just turned 45, the 23rd of January.
Wayne's sessions with Tom Powell are little more than conversation therapy, for no one yet has any real idea what works in the treatment of psychopaths.
I keep to myself. I do a great deal of studying. I do a great deal of reading. I do a great deal of writing.
So you'll see that he's blinking a lot, which means he's under some kind of stress, and maybe it's the stress of trying to dupe the therapist that he's with at the time. And here is another psychopath.
Not good for me to be around any female child. I'd rather be a young child or a teenager.
In this gentleman, we see a striking
Contempt.
shallowness of affect. He speaks
And you'll notice that a lot of psychopaths, if not most of them have dead eyes. They are not alive eyes and dancing eyes. These eyes are half dead, and they really match their personality, because psychopaths, their personalities are actually quite dead. Even if you know them, and they can be glib, they can be charming, but once you get to know them, it's like nobody is home. Nobody is home.
language of treatment that is quite articulate in many ways. He's able to talk about his risk factors, his past, in what appears to be a deceptively open way.
One of my main concerns is that when I someday return to society, is that I'm going to have to be very careful where I'm at all times and who I'm around.
Okay, so look at his eyes. Dead. They're dead looking at the interviewer, at the therapist here. And he's very still and he's blinking a lot. So could it be that he is trying to keep his emotions in check, or just to keep the deception going that he's a good guy underneath it all?
If one looks beyond the words and gauges the affect, the emotion, the feeling that goes with them, at that point you start to see a disconnect with what he's saying and what he's experiencing.
Okay, so obviously he's quite delighted that he's picked this up, and he's got contempt for them because he's picked it up.
And I think that is characteristic of psychopaths.
So this is a female psychopath, Eileen Warnos, who killed a number of her male clients who basically hooked her up for sex. And just look at this woman.
I was just wondering how you're going to be, at 9:30 tomorrow morning.
Again, look at the eyes. They're pretty. It's like they're dead as well. There's no emotion, no true human emotion going on here.
Are you prepared?
I'm all right with it.
She's about to be executed tomorrow or the next day.
And how?
I'm all right with it, but like I said, remember, let them know that I know that the cops knew who I was. After Richard Mallory died, I left prints everywhere, and they covered it up. and let me kill the rest of those guys to turn me into a serial killer. I know they did, because I was no professional serial killer or anything, murderer or whatever you want to call it, you know. I wasn't professional at what I was doing. I did some sloppy work, you know, and I left prints.
Okay, the wide eyes, the crazy eyes. It's like she doesn't really care. Disaffected, not really there, not really connecting to what's happening to her actions.
Prepared yourself for tomorrow morning.
I'm all right with it. Hey, I'm ready to go. Hey, I was tortured at BCI. They had the intercom on in the room, and they kept lying that it wasn't on, and they were using sonic pressure on my head since 1997.
So this woman is very affected. If you look at her head, it's right up, which means she is supremely confident in what she's saying. She believes every word she's saying, whether it's true or whether it's not, or whether it's delusional. So that is the definition of a female psychopath. So this is Ted Bundy, this is the day before his execution, and again you will see dead eyes, nobody home, and a real disconnect to the fact that he's about to be killed the next day. It's like it's ho-hum, neither here nor there.
My brothers and sisters, a home where we as children were the focus of my parents' lives. We regularly attended church, two Christian parents who did not drink, they did not smoke, there was no gambling, there was no physical abuse or fighting in the home.
So, I mean, that is quite confusing what he's talking about, his parents being the perfect Christian people, because his eyes could blink longer than normal, which means often people are hiding the actual truth when they blink longer than what they should.
Smoke, there was no gambling, there was no physical abuse or fighting in the home.
However, he is shaking his head, which is congruent with the rest of his body.
Basically, I was a normal person. I wasn't some guy hanging out at bars or a bum. I wasn't a pervert in the sense that, you know, people look at somebody and say, I know there's something wrong with them, and just tell.
So basically, he's a normal seeming person, you know, a reasonably good-looking guy who has killed over 100 women. That's what the cops are saying. The police are saying that he killed over 100 women. This guy is Richard Kulinski, and he's called the Iceman, and he worked for the Mafia, who was a hitman, and he's talking about one of his hits, unfortunately. So this was him in 2001, and yes, he was on death row. I'm not sure if he's died since, but again, just look at his demeanor and the dead eyes.
Got you, little sucker. Now I got you. I'm gonna light your fire. And I did. I got myself a bottle, some gasoline, and I threw it in the car with him.
And so that is Richard right there. If you can see again, there's absolute deadness within the eyes. So that is one clue that you're talking to a psychopath if they are completely dead in the eyes. And there's a lot of contempt at anyone who's in front of him because they're bored. Often these people are completely bored and they just look for ways to go and get you. They're extremely dangerous psychopaths and sociopaths, whether they kill or whether they don't. This is John Wayne Gacy, who was a clown, is a known clown. He's dead now. He was on death row, and he killed 33 men and boys.
Whether it's Berkowitz, whether it's Bundy, whether it's Williams, Wayne Williams down in Atlanta, or Charlie Manson. See, I don't comment about other cases for the simple fact is that I wasn't there.
Okay, again, he's got eyes that aren't alive. His personality is dull. It's monotone. You'll find that most sociopaths and psychopaths don't have bouncy personalities. They are pretty monotone with how they deliver themselves. And that's how they get under the radar, is because they know how to work normal human beings, because they don't actually have their frontal lobes working properly. They don't have empathy or compassion, which takes up a lot of normal human beings' lives. These people don't have that. So all they're doing is scheming and manipulating and figuring out a way to dupe the nearest person. And the interesting thing is, though, that a person's body doesn't tend to lie. What comes out of the mouth is a lie, but the body tends to leak the truth. Let's have a look at exactly that here.
People don't want to know the truth and the honesty of it.
The honesty, and he shook his head.
If they want to be convinced or brainwashed into what they believe, then fine, then go ahead and kill me. But vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because you will have executed somebody that didn't commit the crime.
There you go. Contempt right there, as though he's mad that he's been caught basically. And he shook his head, which means his body is actually saying he's lying all the way through. So this is just a brief outlook on what psychopaths do and who they are, how they work. And if you've got some in your life, run for the hills. Thanks so much for watching. This is The Dialogue.